Hello and welcome back to the Cafe Cast. We're here to finally finish out Season 8. Good riddance. This is going to be fun. Alright, first with us, OmniViewer.
That's right, folks, I'm back. This was so nice, I came back twice.
Twice in a row. Going for the record. Pick Fairy.
Hello, everyone.
Hello to you too. And the Ninja DC making his Cafe Cast debut, I think.
Yeah, I think. And actually, I think it's the first outside my own channel Brony podcasting I've done since, I think, season 5 or 6 then. It's been a while.
I think the last Cafe Cast I was in was like a long time ago.
Long time ago.
So I take us back when we were still glad someone else was Josh Haber was taking over a story direction or something like that.
People were glad about that.
I don't know. A lot of people are giving Megan McCarthy a lot of shit for, people are unhappy with her for some reason.
But here we're talking about the season that Josh Haber came back to edit. But first, we're going to introduce surprise appearance Calliope Pony.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Very good. Good. Made it just as the door was closing, she slides through.
Oh, I am so glad I was able to make it. I was away from home today, and when I was coming back, my first train, I missed it, and the second train was delayed by 40 minutes, so I was way later getting back home than I was expecting.
I guess this is why nobody had put any trains in my town. Just forget it, you don't want to travel that way.
That's nothing compared to Cincinnati. We built an entire tunnel and then just forget about for over half a century.
I gotta hear that story. But yeah, it was left open a little longer because of Sir not appearing in this film, aka Gunmetal Gator, who is going to be joining us later, but right now he remembered as we were starting up that he had to go shopping, so he's currently in the grocery store taking a call from somebody, and I think it was juice he was trying to buy.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm assuming that we're going to still have plenty of rage on this first episode left for him when he comes back, because it is Yakity Sax. So, going around in the same order, OmniViewer, what did you think of Yakity Sax?
I think it wasn't entirely sure what it was trying to say.
I know what it was trying to say. A 1 and a 2, and a you know what to do. I know what to do. This episode knows what to do.
That.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it did say that quite a bit. I don't know. It's like it was trying to convey the message of you should pursue what makes you happy in life, but then it said even if it makes everyone around you miserable and you actually don't have any talent at it. That's where it crosses the line into you're living in a delusional state. I don't know. It just... I can normally try to rationalize the message of episodes somehow, but this one, I just can't.
It's very ominous. You don't have to tell me. Alright. Pick Fairy.
Let's see. Yakity Sax is one that I have mixed feelings about. There's the fact that it doesn't know what it wants to do. I agree with that. But the other one is that it goes into the personal friendship between the main 6 and how they feel about each other whenever they become with a new hobby, and how it's strange to them at first, but then annoyance, but then acceptance. So it was interesting.
Ninja DC, who just had to tap out for somebody yodeling on his end of the call, so, alright.
Yeah.
Timing on that end.
Alright. But, Yakity Sax, I mean, I hate to do the obvious pun here, but Yakity suck. Like, it was, I would say, honestly, a delightfully bad episode because it's like we haven't had just a solid bad episode this bad since the Cart Before the Ponies. So it was sort of delightful to just have something that was just failed. As for why it failed, I would say just the biggest thing is it had an aborted moral. Like, the idea behind it was okay, where it's like, it's okay to practice something even if you're not good at it. The problem with it is it's not okay to practice something in a very obnoxious way that hurts everyone around you.
Alright. And Calliope.
Yeah, I kind of agree with everyone else that this episode didn't know what it wanted its message to be, because the conflict that the main six were presenting as was, how do you tell a friend that they're bad at something? But more of the conflict was actually derived from the fact that Pinky was being obnoxious and inconsiderate. And they were kind of pursuing the wrong angle to address the problem. Like if Fluttershy had said, Pinky, please don't play outside my cottage at night because you're keeping the animals up, that would have addressed the problem in an honest way without hurting Pinky's feelings. And I also don't like the note that it ended on, because yes, enjoying something is more important than being good at it, but with the Yaks just saying, oh, you play great because you're having a good time. No, she's not playing great. It would have been better if, say, the Yak had said something like, oh, I can tell you really love this. If you want, I will help you learn how to play better.
Although it would have probably sounded more like, Yak will help you learn.
Yes. Yes. Yak will make Pink Pony best pony player of Yak music.
Yak make Pink Pony sophisticated virtuoso. What? Yak help.
A 1 and a 2 and a Yak know what to do.
Though I think I forget. Yeah, that was one thing. Remind me is like, yeah, this episode it shows how bad it is when the Yaks are the best part.
Yeah.
Well, I might stand alone here, but I think this episode was pure genius. I fully identify what it's trying to do. It took that age-old conflict of what if you like something, but you're not good at it, and it said, oh, if you think there's no life in this conflict, left. We have something to show you. I mean, sure, it's all well and good to just say, oh, that's fine, we don't have to listen, you can play, but what if she's so bad that she explodes trees? What if she's so bad that animals flee from her in terror and she's causing harm? I mean, how far can understanding and tolerance and love really stretch? This episode pushes those questions. And what if, when there is no more patience, you tell Pinky she should not play her instrument anymore? What if she is so depressed that she drains the color out of everything around her? It is a no-win scenario. What do you do in these moments of impossible decision-making? And, Lord, I'm even annoying myself here.
Well, first of all, Captain Kirk does not believe in no-win scenarios.
Captain Kirk cheated.
Well, that's true. Although he did win, so...
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of felt like the moral was handled better in that Cutie Mark Crusaders episode, the one where Apple Bloom took up dance, because they established that Apple Bloom wasn't a good dancer and Sweetie Belle wasn't good at crochet, but it was okay because they were having fun with it, and that was what was important. And it worked there because they weren't hurting anyone by what they were doing.
And they were just starting out, so they could always improve.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of raised my eyebrow at this episode where it said, like, Pinkie Pie was practicing for months and not getting any better. Like, why? How do you practice something for months and not show even marginal improvement?
If you don't try.
But she was trying, it seems.
I mean, I think, like, it seemed like what this episode was going for and what I was, in spite of myself, trying to get at the last rant that, yeah, just... it seemed to know what the easy answers were, so it's trying to be so wacky by pushing it to the biggest extreme possible, like, no, what if this? Yes, if I were trying to read into it, like, I mean, it seems like it's pulling from kind of a standard comedic formula that, okay, what if, what we should be able to take for granted is suddenly comedically impossible to work with, or, you know, like Squidward trying to work with SpongeBob only to find that he is completely in a reality of his own. I mean, it's been funny, it's just, I don't know, it didn't seem like this episode had a very good sense of what the joke was, other than how big can we make it. I feel like a lot of comedic writing makes that mistake these days. Just how big, how obvious can we make it? Like, you need a setup that, like, how big it is just part of the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it would have been better if Pinkie Pie had known that she didn't sound good. Like, if she was listening to herself and she knew, and she kept practicing, and if the over-the-top comedy came from her getting more and more frantic, trying to figure out why she wasn't playing well, and it culminated in her going to the Yaks to learn and from the masters, and that was how she could improve herself.
That would be one way to do it, yeah. I mean, I guess it could be funny if she were trying to figure out this instrument, and there's so many complex parts to it that, yeah, the more she tries, the worse she gets because she doesn't know how to do it. Like, paper says this part only works if I blow really hard, and then, I don't know, fill in the blank for yourself. Something explodes or whatever.
If I may.
Yeah, we've seen Pinkie Pie get frustrated in episodes like the one where Pinkie Pie knows and Pinkie Pride, and when Pinkie gets frustrated, it's fun to watch.
I agree with you there.
You were going to say something else, though, Pick?
Yeah, if I may, this reminds me of whenever I was trying to learn how to play the ocarina, or the ocarina, however you pronounce it. And whenever I was learning, I think I was playing it wrong, because, like, it wasn't as the right technique as I was using, wasn't the correct one. As I started learning more and more, whenever you play that kind of instrument, you're just supposed to, like, kind of do a poo instead of a who kind of into the instrument, if that makes any sense.
Having played the flute, it surprisingly does.
Okay. But that's the technique, and once you know that technique, it's easier to play the instrument. And I think in this case, Pinkie Pie just didn't know the right technique to play it, because it was an instrument that was out of her culture and something that wasn't taught to her.
There are lots of ways you could have read into what was going on that would have probably been better avenues to explore than the one the episode went, I would say.
We're not here for what you intended to do. We're here for what you did.
Alright, there you go. was hoping to still be on this one when Gunmetal Gator came back, so I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say too, but
We'll let him catch up.
fair enough. Yeah, I do agree though that, like, yeah, being aware that you're not succeeding at playing the instrument and that you're, if anything, getting worse would probably be funnier than totally unaware and the instrument playing is just that bad. Okay, final thoughts on Yakity Sax. Anyway.
Blah.
Okay, cool. Road to Friendship. Same order, different episode. What'd you think, Omni?
I never knew how much I wanted this show to be an homage to those old Bob Hope and Bing Crosby Road 2 movies until I saw this episode.
Yes! I made an entire video about the Bing Crosby Bob Hope movie references in this episode, because as soon as I realized what they were doing, I just started cracking up.
Yep.
How did I never catch these? I thought I went to obscure movie club all the time.
So you haven't seen those movies?
No, there's like a whole dark patch in my film history. Film viewing history viewing. There's no official term for it, and I'm trying to make one, but no, I have a lot of dark spots to fill in.
They are crazy. They're like live-action cartoon logic, basically.
So like Marx Brothers a little bit.
Oh, very much in that similarity, but skewing a little bit closer to Looney Tunes. Like fourth wall breaks, like characters walking across the set saying they're on the way to the set of a completely different movie. Santa Claus
running gags.
It's just, you have to see them.
Yeah. And like every movie in the Road series is a different plot with different characters, and yet they all hit the same beats with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby going off on an adventure under weird circumstances and meeting up with a character played by Dorothy Lamour and fighting over her but still being friends and playing patty cake and punching someone or getting punched.
So that last one is particularly essential, I take it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. So, Pick Fairy.
Let's see. There's a lot of stuff I want to say about this episode, but to summarize up in a sentence, why road trips can be dangerous to friendships. And that's my one sentence.
Okay. Yeah, well, props for sticking to that. I'm already doing a bad job reinforcing that. But, all right.
So yeah, we're supposed to do like a one sentence go, then our further thoughts after that. Is that we're structured? I felt the Road to Friendship was a good episode, but like its resolution was a little iffy. Though I love how did I phrase it before? The non-antagonist antagonist.
Yeah, I think he was meant to be a stand-in for Dorothy Lamour's characters. Because, normally they have a love triangle set up, which they didn't have in this episode, but she would usually, whether intentionally or not, end up driving a wedge between the friends and kind of driving the plot forward as they were either trying to fight over her or impress her or do something for her, depending on what the movie was. But just for one sentence summary, just say I got a big kick out of this episode just because I got all the old movie references they were making. So I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I hadn't gotten the references, but for what it was, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was one of the more fun episodes of the season. You know, having not gotten the references, I don't even mind that it has the friends getting under each other's skin plot, because that happens, and a lot of the ways it happens made sense. I guess I felt like it was maybe a little, they were strong-arming the narrative a little to push it in that direction. Like, they just start almost randomly doing things, inconsiderate things behind each other's back, spending all the money on a snack or stuff like that. I was like, okay, so we're doing this for until we get back to the fun stuff. But I mean, I liked the road trip song. I think that at this point, Starlight and Trixie's friendship feels a lot more like a real friendship than a lot of the other ones we see in the show.
The song was actually one of the references to the movies.
Yeah. I heard that too.
Yeah, Road to Morocco is the road movie that had that song.
I mean, were these like theatrical releases, or were these like the movies that would be shown ahead of the main feature?
Oh yeah, these were movies that made Bob Hope and Bing Crosby into big-time movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know what movies you guys are talking about.
It's called the Road series, and it was basically just a series of slapstick comedic movies released mostly in the 1940s, a bit into the 50s.
It was anything goes comedy, basically.
Yeah.
Vaudeville amped up to 11.
Yeah, and of course they were traveling to exotic locations set in the 1940s, so let me say some questionable depictions of foreign cultures, but
then again,
put it down to a product of its time.
It's not like the heroes were portrayed as perfect by comparison, so...
Oh no, the heroes were constantly being made fools of or making fools of themselves.
So it's basically in the vein of everyone's ridiculous.
Yes.
Yes, serials were big at about that time in cinema. Like, we had, I think, all the Tarzan movies coming out there, the Sherlock Holmes movies. That comic Blondie had a series of movies from around that time. I mean, yeah, those probably fit right in and, well, in fact, stood out at that.
Yet Orson Welles never made his Shadow movie. He made that Citizen Kane thing instead.
Yeah,
I
never.
guess I can settle for that.
A big waste of time.
I don't know if I have much else to say, though. Like, I think, yeah, Trixie's banter with the guy who wanted her wagon was funny a lot of the time, and,
May I share my final thoughts?
go for it.
Well, the thing about this episode is that it showed how some friendships can be tested by a road trip. Road trips can be very stressful. It can be fun sometimes, but sometimes it can be weird and like stress-inducing, like I was saying. And to be honest, it's just really cool to see the story progressed the way it did, where first it started out all happy and awesome, but then they started getting on each other's nerves, and then betrayed each other's trust. And it was just interesting because it showed the angle from each point of view. It showed Trixie's point of view, and it showed Starlight's point of view. And to me, I thought it was handled pretty brilliantly. And the ending where they agreed not to do a trip again like that kind of disappointed me, because I felt like they could have like rebuilt it to where if they do the trip again, they should plan better, or they should have it to be more arranged to where it satisfies both their wants and needs, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Although Trixie and Starlight, I can believe they'd be like, yeah, maybe we need some time before we do this again. That sense, it kind of reminded me of Look Before You Sleep with the Twilight. Oh, can we do another sleepover again next week? And pillow thrown in her face.
Yeah, I definitely see some parallels between that episode and this one.
Sounds like we have at least one person in here with road trip experience and all the highs and lows that can come with that. Anybody else?
No, I said, yeah, that was actually one part I liked about the episode, the actual conflict, well, the tension that built up. I just don't like how some of the choices felt a little muddled in the second half, like, oh, let me just sell you a wagon. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Though, to be fair, that was very Starlight.
Well,
I think it was older Starlight. By this point in the series, she might have progressed past that, but she's always had a tendency to go straight to the quick and easy way of solving her problems without necessarily thinking about how it will affect others.
That is fair.
I agree with that.
And, operating on not very much sleep kind of does affect
Yeah.
judgment.
That's it. I remember my last
And
road
also-
trip, the day and a half trip in the Greyhound bus down to Florida, where, hey,
Ooh.
not even like that much seat space, and we all had nothing better to do but to take pictures of me sleeping in my shades, using the closest thing I had to a pillow, which was the window next to me. And apparently my mouth was starting to hang open, but with the shades on, you couldn't tell it was a sleeping face, and instead it looked like I was trying to be suave.
Oh, Celestia, I hate bus trips.
Never again. All right. Any other final thoughts or next episode?
My only final thoughts are go watch old classic cinema.
Agreed.
Side with you there. And moving on to the Washouts. All right. Going around, one sentence each, starting out Omniviewer.
Interesting, kind of heartbreaking with the whole Scootaloo aspect. And not a bad return for Lightning Dust, I suppose.
Pick Fairy?
I'd definitely say almost the same. My thoughts are almost the same as Omniviewer. Definitely goes to show more of Scootaloo's interest and test Scootaloo's personality in a sense to where we get to learn more about her. And at the same time, we learn more about Rainbow Dash and the Wonderbolts.
Ninja DC?
It's one of those hard things to break down because it's been a while with this episode. Remember, it's a very episode where it's what went wrong with it was very specific. But my general, I remember what I hate about this episode. Well, I didn't hate. It was okay episode. I felt like two episodes were sort of combined together in terms of morals, and it just didn't mix well. We had one where it was about Scootaloo coming to terms that she might never fly. And the other one dealing with the redemption sort of Lightning Dust, was it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it just didn't work where we didn't get a resolution with Scootaloo getting over her, she might never fly, but also Lightning Dust still sort of being a jerk. Also, hello.
Oh,
Carlos.
Gunmetal Gator returns.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. All right, so you missed Road to Friendship and Yakity Sax. You want to give your quick sentence summary on what you thought of those?
All right, quick sentence summary for Yakity Sax. Literally the void of anything Pinkie Pie related into what falls into the character caricatures of what one would assume Pinkie Pie is to its zenith point. Road to Friendship is honestly the best out of a bad situation of season 8 when it comes to friend divisive episodes, because quite literally Starlight and Trixie, best pairing for friendshipping with antagonists.
I feel kind of bad that he missed the whole details behind that.
I see.
Are you familiar with the Bing Crosby and Bob Hope Road to movies?
No.
You should correct this error immediately or after the podcast.
Yes, you should.
It's okay, I don't know either.
I gotcha.
Right. Well, we have to crown the movie buffs in the call.
They got crowns.
And now the Washouts. We're on that. All right, Calliope, what did you think of Washouts?
I'm having a really hard time coming up with a one-sentence summary because I feel like it was kind of a jumbled up episode, and there was some stuff that I really liked and some stuff that I really didn't, and I'm not entirely sure what my overall feelings on it are.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. If you can tell from my very extended summary.
Yeah. Mine too, actually. Like, if I had to sum up this episode, my thoughts on this episode in one phrase, it'd be execution matters. Sorry, but it does. Because, I mean, I love the conversation between Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash. I kind of like how Rainbow Dash and Lightning Dust hit it off when she comes back, kind of that frenemy vibe. I'm cool with that, but I mean, yeah, Scootaloo switching passions as though there was a whole first act we didn't get to see, but we don't have to see that because teenagers and stuff, they do that, and Rainbow Dash has 100,000 foot my ego gags because Rainbow Dash, ego, funny. Lightning Dust goes out the exact same way she did the first time, where she abruptly turns into Whitney Dastardly at the end. Like, I didn't think it was put together all that well, which is a shame because it had a lot going for it and a lot more potential still. It's just firmly in the mixed category for me.
Gotcha. It's kind of sort of like one moment defines this episode. Scootaloo actually admitting externally her disability and just the feels that come along with it makes your judgment call whatever you decide. For me, it's pretty okay. It's pretty okay. Pretty good. Not great, but just good.
So I think that's the opinion on this one divided right down the middle. Like 3, yeah, Scootaloo development good, and 3, yeah, Scootaloo developed this way, not that good. Or at least mixed. I don't think anybody said it was bad.
No, I wouldn't say it was bad. I would say, actually, one of the things I liked best about it was the way they wrote Rainbow Dash, because it showed her going through a lot of complex things and dealing with it in what seemed like a realistic way. Like, at first, her ego was very threatened. And can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at first, her ego was very threatened, and she was acting in her typical brash, dismissive kind of way. And then she realized that she did like the Washouts show, and she came around to it. And then when she met up with Lightning Dust again, you could tell there was some tension there, but she actually dealt with the meeting in a very mature way. And throughout all the episode, you could see the conflict between her ego and her care for Scootaloo and her feelings toward Lightning Dust all sort of coming together within her and her trying to deal with that. And I thought that part was well written.
All right.
I didn't think that. Well, I mean, I thought some of it was well written. I didn't go for the parts. Well, not all the parts so much, where they tried to make like a gag out of it, where anything somebody tries to say to her, it says, "I couldn't hear you over the sound of my ego." Or yeah, even as Scootaloo, like she takes Scootaloo to Spitfire for. Okay, and the Matt Foley reference was hilarious, but yeah, it takes her to Spitfire for life lesson, and then what she wants to take to it after trying to make Scootaloo sadder but wiser is, okay, now let's get back to worshipping me, and the dynamic at the beginning I felt was, I mean, played out before this show even started production. The oh, I see you're suddenly not worshipping me anymore.
Yeah, parts of that were just clunky.
It's just clunk.
Yeah, like I said, like this year I felt they were trying to combine 2 different plots, like one with Scootaloo getting over a disability, like acknowledging that, and then the other part was like Rainbow Dash's arrogance episode, so they did not mix.
It's a shame too, because I did like Rainbow Dash coming around to the Washouts and like picking up kind of her love-hate relationship with Lightning Dust.
Yeah. But I didn't like the way, in both of Lightning Dust's episodes, it's like in the first part of the episode, she comes across as a character who's kind of mixed, some good, some bad. And at the end of both episodes, they say, nope, she's a bad guy, so we're just going to push her way over the top and show that she's completely wrong.
Completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's like
Easily
they turn her into a
irredeemable.
sociopath almost, which,
I mean,
that part just doesn't,
then
I don't
again,
think that
she
ever
did have a
gelled.
bit of a basis.
Well, when you have someone who's reckless and nobody telling her no, I mean, eventually that she's gonna go too far.
I mean, like, then again, Wonderbolt's Academy already had her basically, like, not even care about, like, Rainbow's friends being caught in a hurricane from her own creation, so...
But both times it didn't feel like eventually she works her way up to this. It felt like, woohoo, living life in the fast lane, fun and danger, a couple bumps and bruises, but who cares? But, I mean, I'm having a thrill, aren't you? And then, like, at the end, it's suddenly something worse than ever happens, like, oh, a dangerous cataclysmic event that nearly plummeted an innocent pony to their death and or permanent injury to the point where they could press homicide charges against me. Life in the fast lane, hoof bump!
Yeah!
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big difference between being a reckless daredevil and strapping a kid to a rocket sled that hasn't been tested. I mean, the professional daredevils actually do have some sense and care for safety.
Yeah.
And then, well, even the way, like, her tone in that moment, let Scootaloo, like, well, that doesn't sound very safe. You're not flaking on me, are you? Like, I mean, that's really not what a friend says, or even someone who wants to be on your team says. You know, it's somebody who wants to strong arm you says, but like Lightning Dust, she never gave off the impression of being a strong arm you type of character until they take her to that.
Until the plot called for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did hear somebody actually say that, well, this is total rumor, but that the original draft of the script was that she was more inattentive than, like that, like she was busy setting up the rocket as Scootaloo's trying to bring up her concerns, and she only half hears, which I guess would have at least been better.
Okay. The same approach that they did in Copperfoot Opponents, in which like Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Rarity didn't pay attention to their sisters' concerns. It would actually improve this episode. Like, because like it's not above a good because of like those sorts of limitations that it has on Lightning and the clunkiness of Rainbow around the middle.
Did anyone else say, I mean, maybe I'm the only one in the world who has this problem, I don't know, but I mean, the style of humor with the, making it bigger and more extreme or more obvious or more played up how dense the characters are, like, this is another one that goes for that, is its style of humor, like, Midget Pony is, no, not that angry, that angry, no, that angry! Like, I don't know, does anybody else get sick of that?
Yeah.
Depends on how it's done. There's a time and a place for it.
I mean, like, in the case of Short Fuse, it works really well, in my opinion.
Well, Rainbow Dash's ego is, like, not that hurt, like, what? Oh, I can't believe this is a ripoff of the Wonderbolts that dares to use bleachers! Rainbow Dash, every show has bleachers, what a narc!
Okay, that is just, it's just like her looking for like strings and to like making an argument, like trying to ham fist into like an argument of like for her.
I felt like the ham fisting was that's the joke, like, really? Okay, I'm gonna stop before I get ahead of myself here, but anybody else though?
I'd really like to say that I really loved how there was this, like, I forgot who mentioned it. But someone mentioned that Scootaloo admits her own handicapness whenever it
Yeah, I
comes to
did.
flying. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's really cool that she actually openly admits it.
I mean, I would nominate that conversation between her and Rainbow Dash for best moment in this episode.
Yeah, it's definitely the best moment in the episode for sure. Like, but if we're gonna talk about like say series wise for like those two's interactions, would rank up in the top 3.
That pretty much is the focal point, I think, because that whole fact that Scootaloo can't fly is basically what motivates the entire episode. I mean, obviously there's debate on whether or not it was executed well throughout, but I do think that was indeed, like, you can draw everything that happens in the episode to that moment.
Actually, is anybody? I mean, I'm almost wondering. I think maybe they had the image of that moment, that conversation in mind from the very beginning, and then kind of tried to build an episode around that.
Yeah, I can easily imagine that.
Most likely.
It's like we want to almost end the show with a bang, so let's just basically have like Scootaloo confront her issue that she wasn't able to openly talk about it before because show ratings and censors. But it's like we're nearing the end of our run. We can get risque.
Well, let's not forget they addressed Scootaloo not being able to fly before.
Yeah, but like non-specific, vague about it. They were very vague about it.
I would have to disagree with that because Diamond Tiara wasn't vague about it.
I mean, they addressed it, I would say, but I mean, I can see the argument that this is the next step in that development where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready to, if it happens, great, but I'm ready to take it for granted that it won't, so what do I do now?
Yeah, I think the last time it was brought up, she was asking, what if I never fly? Like, she was still hoping that she would, but worried that she wouldn't. And here she straight up said, I can't. It was like she was admitting to herself that she knew it was never going to happen, and she hadn't been willing to give up on that hope before.
Well, I think here was even like she wasn't that she's admitting she could never fly. It was admitting like, yeah, even if I do fly, there's no way I'm ever going to be a Wonderbolt. Like, period. Like, even if I do fly, it'll just be barely.
Well, it all falls within about the same confines.
I think what bothers me about it, though, is that was a really good moment that wasn't supported by the rest of the episode. I feel like
I think that's what I always agree with.
Yeah, she and Rainbow Dash needed to have a more heart-to-heart extended conversation talking about her feelings and her thoughts on what was going on in her life, and we didn't really get that to support that one emotional moment.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly how I felt. DC, I think he said as much, although our other three who are on the more positive end of this episode, I know you seem at least pretty satisfied with that moment.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
good is good.
It's good. What makes the episode good is honestly that moment there. You know, like it would have been an okay or mediocre episode otherwise, but like that moment just elevates to the good rating.
It's almost more than I can give it. I guess I tend to emphasize story a little more than the average analyst, but I guess I kind of see it as like a path from A to B that on some level you have to understand that, like, okay, if some moments are going to let you down, like buying one really good, powerful sentiment, I mean, it's hard to do with it if the episode around it seems to disown it. Cut Before the Ponies picked a good moral, I thought, but
It was a good moral. However, everything the episode did after the 5-minute mark was just like, Drill it into your heads, kids. Drill it into your heads, kids. Let's even have a talk about it.
But before we go too far into that episode, final thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, it was wonderful seeing the return of LightningBliss. For like the first two-thirds of the episode, like her like having like of course like an angst to Rainbow for like a bit, but at the same time it's like, okay, let's act professionally, but at the same time I'm still somewhat butthurt, and like having a protege side with me might be like the biggest revenge I could ever have against you. So. And it's her own volition. It's just like, yeah, this leads to like a good ideas for like a conflict building up for like probably like a really nice sequel to Wonderbolts Academy. It's just only hampered down by certain key aspects of like Rainbow's character, which I don't like. Along her clunkiness. So like, okay, I'm just trying to be like hard headed and trying to like subtract whatever coolness is in this show. And also, like, LightningBliss's comedic Team Rocket blasting off moment.
Literally Team Rocket.
Yeah, literal Team Rocket. Like I have a feeling like they were like, hey guys, here's our second Pokemon reference in the entire series.
What do you mean after Twilight turning into Rapidash?
Yes.
How much you want to bet someone on the staff drew an extra storyboard panel where the rocket explodes? and then they
I'll be back, Rainbow Dash! Yeah, no, you won't.
Mortality.
But even this show about ponies will probably never go that far.
No, except for becoming stone and being crushed.
They did have a graveyard funeral scene in the Hearts and Hooves episode, the first one.
Yes. And
so it can happen, but
it definitely can. Well, and let's not forget about like what happened in I forget the episode's name. Let me just quickly get it.
Well, the next episode is about to go to a potentially dark place.
Oh, yeah, that episode. But I mean, I'm talking about the one for like season 7.
Well, while he figures that out, how about we use that excuse to segue to Rockhoof in a hard place?
And dare we not go because Health of Information. It's the Health of Information. That episode is titled.
Okay, so Rockhoof in a hard place.
Oh, okay.
What'd you think on me?
It was an episode that reminds you how many of our World War II veterans we have lost and how few are left. So you need to listen to them while they're still there.
Mm-hmm.
Pick Fairy.
Man, I can't go that deep. This is one of my favorite episodes of season 8, mainly because of how much you can relate to it, even though at the same time you can't relate to it because it's not something that every day someone's experience can actually go through. But it's something that I really appreciate.
Ninja DC.
I'm always sort of conflicted in this episode. Like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Overall, I'd say it's good. It just, I didn't really like it felt sort of like a weird conflict. How hard it was for him to adapt. Like, I felt like they leaned a little too hard. Like, they were doing a serious story, but leaning a little too much on the comedic at times. So it just felt like a disconnect there.
Well, it is for a younger audience. You can't go too dramatic.
Also, is Winnie the Pooh, but most of his stories kill it every time with the comedic and sentimental balance.
Yeah, especially when your main character's a teddy bear. That's literally, you can't go wrong with that.
I'm sure there's some horrible teddy bear story out there that would beg to differ, but in the meantime...
Why do I think of Teddy?
I think this episode was simple but effective.
You're here.
I guess much like that analysis.
Well, one sentence, right?
Exactly. I should shut up while I'm ahead.
All right. An episode featuring one character that was only introduced in the last season and a character introduced this season has more heart put into it than any episode featuring the main six in this season. Wow.
About 2 episodes from now, I might beg to differ, but
I'm just like, simply put, Yona and Rockhoof are easily like the best pairing I've seen for like the wholesome pairing of like student teacher I've seen in the show.
Agreed. I can totally agree with that.
That was pretty fun, yeah. I guess my thing with this episode, I mean, it uses the formula of, okay, we'll try to solve this person's problem 6 ways to Sunday, and yeah, cycling through the solutions, and they're all going to go wrong because wackiness and comedy and forfeiting character traits, and on that level, I thought it was no winter wrap-up, but like better than horseplay, worse than winter wrap-up. All in all, solid but unspectacular. I mean, because yeah, a lot of Rockhoofs. I mean, what happens if we make him the male pony? Hey, I'm just gonna scream at the top of my lungs that Cranky Doodle has a really embarrassing rash. What happens if we pair him with his old buddies? Let's see, meditation and going to sleep are basically the same thing, right? What happens if we try to make him an adventurer? Hey, the stars are against me too!
Fate is against me!
I think the words I was looking for before is like some of the conflicts with the present just felt a little convoluted. Like the one that just always comes to mind is like the Dragon Flame competition between Spike and
Smolder.
Because like it's like looking at it's like, oh come on, like who would like not see when fire coming out would be like panic about that? Like that's not really that's not really his fault there.
Yeah, some of it's to crash.
Yeah, and if Spike and Smolder are routinely having fire breathing contests, why are they doing it inside of a flammable building?
It's the equivalent of basically sneaking off into the bathroom to smoke cigarettes. This is a school.
Or just in the Japanese terms, like, we're just going to set up some firecrackers out, like, in the school premises because we're edgy like that.
I have a closer comparison, but I think I'm going to keep it to myself. So anyway, I mean, where I do like, I mean, unlike Horseplay, for example, where I felt like they were just kind of crowbarring in gags, like, yeah, hey, how can we make Celestia the worst actress in the world because she's so clearly would be that. I mean, it was, I don't know, that's where it gets like borderline Yakity Sax-ish for me, just like how far can we push this to be baseballingly ridiculous. I did buy most of what was going wrong with Rockhoof. I kind of felt like the gags themselves took over for a while is all.
Well, for me, I felt like the gags were very much like well-meaning, like especially for like a character which we didn't really have much of a basis to fall back on. Only know about like his backstory and a little bit of how he talked in Shadowplay. But then to see him like suffering through like all of this, like not being used to like any customs and such, even if there would realistically be some occupations in which he would be able to like fit in nicely, just sort of like the fact that like he just couldn't like work at all in any sensible like job offerings that he would desire, made it very tragic and just really made you think of him as like the underdog in this, despite him being like the Viking Hercules of the series.
I mean, as much as I appreciate that, message that, okay, we still have things we can learn very much from veterans and such. I'm like, okay, he's pony with superhuman strength and a squeaky clean, spotless record of morality. I feel like there's something you can do with that in the modern world.
Dink, 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 and then it's like a comic book flies by, and then you say dink, dink, dink.
Yeah, well, heck, I mean, manual labor is a thing. Have him move, do a full week's work in a day, and pay him out the wazoo for it.
Welcome to Rockhoof Industries.
And put everyone else out of a job?
Well, I feel like you could expand your whole company. Like, hey, it's like I just hired 10 guys for the price of one who charges for the price of two.
That would be industry destroying. That would be even worse than like having a robot.
Alright, brain center at Mr. Wiggles.
But then, of course, like we mentioned, this episode goes to a pretty dark place before it reaches its resolution. Rockhoof is basically ready to lay down and die before we get our happy ending.
I would make a comparison to Futurama, in like that one episode in which Fry is like, "Oh, I didn't get frozen, and I basically like, there's no job for me available at all." Like, so I might try, like, and like someone is trying to push him to like be frozen again, essentially. Mm-hmm. So like, I also kind of like compare it to Dad's like the sad fact of like I'm gonna be missing like this reality just so I could be history.
I mean, I might have felt like that was for the kinds of problems he was having, maybe a step too far. I mean, I don't know. This is one when you have like feelings about an aspect. It's like, how do you? Like,
I mean, there's
justify that. It's like
there's a sub.
I was okay with it. I guess I might have felt it more. But
there's a subtext you could read into this episode, but it's one of the more divisive hot button topics out there these days.
I mean, yeah, suicide is definitely a button you don't want to
no, not even about the suicide aspect.
I think more. Is it the one you brought up in your one sentence intro?
More just about how, like, Rockhoof is basically a very masculine man in a society that is largely feminine.
Oh. So,
ouch. But at least he still has the most masculine character of all to understand him, the little girl Yak.
Oh.
Anyway, though, final thoughts before we move on to what lies beneath.
Okay, this episode makes Yona favorite student 6 member, and Rockhoof into top 3 of the Shadow Play 6.
The pillars, you mean?
The pillars of Equestria, yeah. And just overall, everyone tried their hardest. Didn't think about the resolution of it coming to oh, we'll have you be like a lore speaker, talk about your history, give your fables out. Maybe you can become the grim fairy tales of ponies.
A folklorist.
Folklorist.
Yeah.
That's the actual term. So
or anthropologist, essentially.
Sometimes there's a fine line.
Yeah. I could see that. I could see that anthropologist is more specifically scientific about the study of culture, while folklorist is just someone who goes into the lore, is a fanatic about it, and likes delving into the details of the morals and such.
Yeah, there can be crossover, but
there definitely can be crossover. It just whenever I hear folklorist, it's it reminds me about a certain character from a video game series that is kind of squeaky with me. Yeah.
Besides, I think we can all agree there are no anthropologists in Equestria.
No, only hippologists.
Maybe Lyra in the fan works, but
yeah.
Well, no, the equivalent would be hippologists. Anthropology is the study of man. Hippology is the study of equines.
Mhm.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah.
That's the actual real world term for it.
Didn't they make a joke about that in the comics or something? That hippology is the study of horses and ponies and equines.
And then they found
It is.
bow that wore a bow like Apple Bloom. So, yeah, that was a very good start, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
the word hippopotamus translates as river horse, horse of the river.
Oh,
Okay.
that makes a confusion about that from the movie.
Kind of like how Donkey Kong means stupid monkey.
That is sad.
Yeah. Well, for my final thoughts on this episode, we talk much about Yona, but I kind of wish we had more episodes like this sprinkled throughout the season, because this entire season was introducing and establishing the young six as sort of the successors to the main six. And yet all the episodes we got of them focused on them as a group. This episode with Yona is the only one to really focus on one of them apart from the group and give one of them individual attention. And I wish we had gotten more of those for the other characters as well.
Well, Smolder was off on her own a lot, separate from the other group.
Yeah,
I guess we got a
that was
Gallus
for
one.
Dragon episodes.
Yeah, we got a Gallus one in the Hearthwarming Club. I guess sort of a Gallus one, even though.
I think of that more as a group episode. I mean, it came back around to Gallus at the end, but it was about all of their stories. I guess you could argue Smolder got individual attention in the Spike episode at the end that I guess we'll get to later. But I feel like this is the only one that really took some time to look at one of them individually and see what she admired and who she looks up to and show her making a personal connection with someone she can see as a mentor figure.
Mm-hmm. It's like sort of like connecting more of yak culture to like ponies. But like there are some ponies who completely understand yak sensibilities, and it's and finding like a relatable role model and like in a sea of like a peaceful folk. It's just,
or perhaps even more poignant, yak culture is what pony culture used to be.
oh
Ooh,
my
yeah.
god! Oh my god!
I didn't even think about it like that.
Got a lot of weird real world connections that way, actually.
Like traditionalists, like what was the name of like the Normans? No.
The Saxons? The Angles?
No. Like the people in the weird like black hats that live without technology.
Amish?
The Amish?
Amish.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Anyway, though, everybody cool for moving on to what lies beneath now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. I'm the viewer.
Definitely an interesting Student 6, Young 6, whatever you choose to call them episode. Interesting to see. I mean, we were just talking about how we don't get to see them individually. This is as close as we ever got to seeing them individually this season. So, and in that regard, it managed to do quite a bit for what little time it had.
Pick Fairy.
Overall the same. I really think it was cool that they were given a series of tests for each one of them, and the tests revealed a little bit more about each one of them. Something I'd like to point out is that we learn that the Tree of Harmony is sentient. Or not sentiment, but you know the S word.
Sentient.
Sentient.
Ninja DC.
I would say this is honestly one of my favorite episodes of the season because it just felt this episode more than I think even later in this. I think even we could say a better finale, but overall, yeah, I forgot it's supposed to be a sentence. I felt this was a good episode because I felt this episode was a good episode because it properly used the Student 6 as like it properly shared them in the same way that we like some of the older finales and openers, like evenly split between the main 6, where it's like solving a problem. It did that with the student 6, where they all got their moments of shine. We got to see some of their progression. So it was overall a very great, balanced episode that showed off the student 6.
Calliope Pony.
I loved this episode. It provided character development for all of the young 6. It provided world building by expanding the lore for the Tree of Harmony. And it contributed to an overarching storyline by really well foreshadowing the final episode of the season. I loved it.
Oh, your answer is so perfect.
Oh, thank you.
I should have been like that.
An episode that truly exemplifies what it truly like feels like a current like reflection on the writing of the show right now, as it tries to attempt to like remake like the premiere of the series, where the young 6 discovering like through their insecurities like their way of like being true friends with one another. And I think that is such a beautiful thing to see. That's what makes this episode one of the most impactful of the later seasons. And I really hope that like this can carry on to the end for like season 9.
So, a lot of unrestrained praise going around.
Will you buck the trend?
Well, I'll be honest. By this point, I mean, after Season 7 was the one I had no negative votes on. All my, like, never gave a thumbs down through all of Season 7. By this point, with my lowest ever tally for great episodes in a 26-episode season being 4, I was kind of set on this being the season that I had no great episodes in. But, yeah, I was giving up on it, and I have a thing for aesthetic similarities like that, so aren't I lame? But yeah, no, then this episode came along and I'm like, darn it, it can't even be that. I can't help it. I freaking love this one. I mean, yeah, I love the revelation with Smolder that, okay, she's self-conscious about enjoying the finer things, but I mean, I loved how they played Gallus, like, not even that everybody needed to have, like, this really embarrassing revelation, but okay, they all did have to, yeah, let on to some kind of vulnerability. They had to open up to each other a little bit more. I loved that. And, you know, I loved how they played the tree conflict, the unraveling the mystery of that bit by bit, and yeah, the revealed at the end that it's become sentient and that there is the all-knowing force in there. Loved Sandbar having to stand up to Rainbow Dash and
Rarity.
The other one was, yeah. And,
Rarity Dash, essentially. It's Rarity Dash.
No, he wasn't in this episode.
But he would want to be.
But yeah, this is one of my new all-time favorites, I think, like definitely top 20.
I'd have to agree with you. It's a really good episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was interesting in this one, even though at the end they implied that it was mostly random, generated by the students' minds. It was interesting that the first 2 characters who overcame their challenges are the ones who are traditionally the most standoffish, meaning they had to be the ones who had to help everyone else first.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think that what really sold the episode for me was like Gallus was something he was trying to solve, but if I remember right, he was the first one to solve his.
Yeah.
I think they implied he and Smolder were kind of timed semi-close to each other.
Yeah.
Because they run into each other first, then...
Yeah, but I think he was the first one that we saw solve his puzzle.
But I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, this was an episode about, being willing to open up, I guess, a little bit, not feeling like you have to guard yourself so tightly. And yeah, I think it kind of fit that the 2 characters who kind of take center stage are the ones who have the toughest time doing that.
Wait. Second. you just said it guarded too tightly. That actually makes Gallus' trial actually work dramatically. Oh my god!
You're welcome.
Seriously!
Closing himself off so much that he literally suffocates.
That's it! That's it! That's the one missing key! Now everything makes the episode better! Top tier! Top tier!
Alright, are we doing final thoughts now?
Well, we're going around discussing. I mean, does everybody just want to move on from this one now, or what do you want to say?
I just have a bit more to say. Like, this episode was probably like the best at implementing Cozy Glow at all.
Actually,
This is true.
come to think of it, maybe yeah.
Like, just her subtle manipulation while not giving her away. It just it had a little bit more of an edge compared to like the finale. So, and it just was like it seemed to work enough for me to believe it somewhat while still being like super suspect. The only thing now, like the episode that just seems to be like, was this manufactured by Cozy in order for her to discover something, or was this just like a happy happenstance for her?
I got the impression it was more of a happy happenstance for her, that she found out the tree roots were down there because of what the others told her, and she jumped on the opportunity first to make sure they didn't tell anyone else, and second to make use of it for herself.
Yeah, I guess the thing that had me like scratching my head was just like, okay, maybe pay attention more to like the fact that like they were recognized by the tree, but I guess she was more self-centered and was like, I'm gonna get this power for myself and for some friendship, Al.
And actually, just before her really ominous moment at the end of that one of the episode's other best moments, that I liked, the students realizing they haven't studied at all and just like, worn out and happy. We're all gonna fail. And we're gonna fail together. This episode is absolutely charming.
It is. It absolutely is. It makes this whole gaggle of characters just so fulfilling to like look at and see them like go through like their personal struggles. Even like some of them dealing with like the shadows of the past. Like, well, at least we got a shadow appearance from like the Storm King in the actual series now.
Closest they've come to acknowledging a movie.
Yes. Well, except for what happened in Shadow Play with the sirens.
Or the mention of the movie in the season opener.
But that was just more shoehorned
in.
Well, didn't they like basically recap it to explain why the map was bigger?
Yes.
Yeah, because if people came into the new season without having seen the movie, they needed to get everyone up to speed.
And there was an entire episode where they go to the Hippogriff / Sea Pony Kingdom.
Yeah.
Mount App.
Yeah, so there's been a bit more than just that.
I mean, I didn't mean it's been the only one, but the only mention of that movie that they have a character actually make an appearance.
Well, yeah, that's different.
Yeah, that's different because that's like, say, bringing it back like Party Favor. Not Party Favor, Cheese Sandwich.
Yeah, and I loved seeing Silverstream stand up to her fear of the Storm King.
Yeah, it's like that kind of like really did set her apart from Pinkie Pie, from being the Pinkie Pie of the group. Like, she's like, I'm actually could be a bit weak when it comes to like some of my weaknesses, but it's like as soon as you get me huffing and puffing, I'm just gonna blow away everything that scares me. Righteous fury.
And also, she has always been portrayed. I mean, she hasn't had a lot of appearances, but she's always been portrayed as this extremely positive, happy-go-lucky sort of character. But here we saw that she has like full-on PTSD from this situation.
Well, yeah.
But, It's like there's another compartmentalized side, yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes her even more interesting than Pinkie Pie in a way. Well, not in the like weirdness department, but just like eternal like machinations for like trauma and such.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like first few seasons, Pinkie Pie, I think I'll always vouch was maybe actually this show's like true one of a kind creation. Which, okay, that almost sounds like I'm using her to talk down to the rest of it, but I'm not. Like, I'm saying, not many shows, even really great ones, have something that's absolutely one of a kind. I mean, but yeah, like as good a character as Twilight or Rarity or even Rainbow Dash, who's my favorite, is. I think you could find similar sort of ideas. I don't think you could find another Pinkie Pie quite so easy.
A fourth wall breaker who doesn't really acknowledges the fourth wall like say certain other ones.
The closest I could like go to describing her is a combination of SpongeBob and Tylee from Avatar with a little bit of Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls tossed in.
Funny because Hera.
So,
Yeah, but this episode was like really great. I know we keep praising it, but like I just want to praise it one more time before we end it. I really loved how, first off, the Tree of Harmony really like stood out and wanted to test the student 6 to teach them more about friendship in a sense to where they can know more about like the sense of it all and themselves in the process, and it's really interesting.
Okay.
Well, how they play that. I agree. How they pace that and play it out with the tree teaching them bit by bit and the mystery of what's going on. I like how that progressed.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's also like the thing about like Yona's trial, like also like encompasses like the whole like don't close yourself in, like let yourself out and be free in order to interact with these arachnids.
Spiders want to be friends?
You should let them. Maybe they might bite you, but then again, you might get superpowers, so who knows?
Or you might have a spider army that can guide you through a labyrinth.
Hard to argue with that. Because what happened.
Oh yeah, and lastly but not least, let's not forget about Ocellus's trial and how some of silver streams. Just a shame of like your relation to like a big bad.
Yeah. Plus a sobbing Queen Chrysalis. Like, I don't want to be Queen Chrysalis. That's a pretty effective image.
Yes.
Ocellus's was maybe the cutest, especially at the end when Smolder admits, I like girly things and cute things, and you know what, I was going to invite you to a secret tea party, but if you don't want to come, and that's what got Ocellus to change back to herself, was going to a tea party.
That was really sweet, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even hokey. It's like, this episode knows how to do tonal whiplash very well.
Really good stuff. I mean, yeah, Michael Vogel, man, like I think he was a real find. Like, I think he has 3 of my 5 favorite episodes from this season. He can really hit it out of the park sometimes.
So yeah, I just love all these 6. There isn't like a single one of them that I don't like, except for maybe like Sandbar. But that's really it. I mean, and even the Sandbar had like an incredible one in which like he rebelled against the pony like saviors for the sake of the outsiders.
I actually thought Sandbars was really significant because what set them off at the beginning of the episode was Cozy Glow's insinuations that Sandbar, as a pony, was so much better at friendship and that he was the only one it could come naturally to. And yet, after all that, he was the last one to overcome his trial. All his friends managed it before he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's...
Said that his had to be straight up rejecting that. The idea that he should choose, always put ponies first and other things second. So, everybody cool for moving on to the next one now?
Yep.
Yeah, let's move on to
All right.
the trifecta.
Same old quick cycling shtick. Sound of Silence, Omniviewer.
More Kieran, please.
McFerry.
Sorry. I'm trying to think of which to say, because there's two things I want to say, but I'm supposed to say the one.
Faster that way anyway.
Alright. The song was perfect in every way. I love the song. And the second thing I really want to say is that I love the moral of the story.
Did you see?
What to say? This is probably one of my top 3 of the season. It was a very good episode, very good song. Surprisingly, AJ and Fluttershy have one of the best duo dynamics in the show currently. And Kieran are amazing.
Calliope Pony.
My Little Pony featured Japanese unicorns in a conflict that was straight out of The Giver, and it was beautiful.
Oh my god! Oh my god, I remember that story.
Gunmetal Gator.
Presenting Viva Las Pegasus Part Deuce. The Silencing. AKA best pair for friendship maps. Makes like a quick trip over to a Kieran village and just saves everyone with the power of like Applejack being like the main heroine this time.
Well, they were both kind of equal in it.
Oh, yeah, just like
Actually, I might almost argue that both Applejack and Fluttershy episodes of like Applejack's sort of strong morality takes the lead, with Fluttershy as the temperance.
Applejack is justice. Fluttershy is the temperance. It all leads back to the tarot.
Actually, on that note, though, I remember after watching this episode for the first time, I was thinking, would it have worked better if instead of Fluttershy and Applejack, it had been Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash?
Interesting question.
A lot of times in the episode,
I think
I felt like Applejack was behaving a little more Rainbow Dash-ish.
I
mean, like
didn't
when
quite
Applejack
see.
meets Pony, whose name I'm not going to remember, but you know the one who
Autumn Blaze.
Okay,
Autumn
yeah.
Blaze.
I mean, and Autumn Blaze is talking about how you can't give up your emotions just to keep things even keel. But I mean, you have the sense that Applejack gets it, but she's right there with her on that. I don't know if Rainbow Dash would have been, or if you would have gotten quite the same sense from her. Like, I mean, once Rainbow realizes what's right, she stands behind it pretty passionately. But I don't know if that kind of thing is quite so for Applejack.
Or if Rainbow would have necessarily been as quick to stop arguing with Fluttershy.
Well, I feel like if we're talking about alternate ones, I feel AJ was important here because she was like the level-headed one. So like, but I feel like another alternative would be Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie, just because Pinkie Pie would be you can't shut up Pinkie Pie. So having her like, so like the opposite side of like the silence versus like speak your mind sort of thing. I felt they could have done better dynamics with that, but.
But
Oh my goodness! You just put a thought in my head. What would happen if you dumped Pinkie Pie in the stream of silence? I think the universe might break.
Yeah.
But then again, Picamina was already ruined by this season.
Wouldn't she just become Marble 2?
I think she might become what Starlight Glimmer was trying to turn her into in the Cutie map.
That would just be like, it takes more than that to contain the pink.
The river turns pink.
Ultimate
emphasizing
charades
all of her
master.
silent skills, or mime and juggling and dancing.
Yeah, because she was silenced in Magic Duel, so...
Mm-hmm.
But it was implied, though, that the water does more than just take away your voice.
Yeah.
It takes away your soul.
I got the impression that it didn't quite take away emotions, but that it subdued them.
Probably.
They still...
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, they still clearly emoted. It just wasn't, like, big emotions.
Yeah, like
If you like,
Autumn Blaze,
yeah, like if you,
Blaze was able to feel frustrated until she broke the spell on herself. And the other Kieran were able to feel unhappy at seeing Fluttershy and Applejack argue, and were able to be impatient with Autumn Blaze, but like everything was muted for them.
Actually, this is another one, like, you know, well, actually, I see this episode, like, right after my speculation of no great episodes goes down the tubes, like, for this one, and hey, back to back, how about that?
Yep.
Good. How much can I be wrong in the span of a short time?
Let me count the
Maybe
way.
the show enjoys proving you wrong.
Possible. Although,
It's going.
I don't know how,
It's going.
keeping scorecards there, I don't know what it would come out to. I feel like I got the touchdown with the, who's the bad guy in Rarity Investigates. I mean, that episode I did a reaction video to that, but yeah, the second Wind Rider comes on screen, like, before Rainbow Dash even finishes having her big reaction, just for whatever reason, I guess was just feeling the vibe of the episode. I was like, he's the bad guy, isn't he? Just the second he appeared on screen.
You know, I'm kind of surprised he wasn't in the Washouts. But anyway.
He probably wouldn't be interested.
Yeah. Well, he was retired.
Yeah. And he didn't strike me as the Daredevil type.
That too.
Circling back around to Sounds of Silence, though, now this particular season wasn't very strong on songs, but this episode had a wonderful song. I loved it.
It really did. Yeah.
it felt like it was the songs of the show have changed over time. Like season 1 and 2 had very distinct songs where it started to get more, I say, less classic cartoon or classic Disney and more pop as things went along. This one felt more like a classic season 1 or season 2 song.
I'd have to agree with that.
I don't know. The season 1 songs, you had a couple that were very orchestral, for lack of a better term, but then you had a couple that almost felt like they were trying to be parodies of what you expect from that kind of show. But, you know, this one felt like they really went above and beyond, though.
Yeah. And generally speaking, songs in this series tend to be mostly positive, cheerful, upbeat. There's been very few songs that are not so cheery and upbeat. I think like the first one I can think of was the sad song in Magical Mystery Cure, and that was like the end of season 3. And this one was actually very poignant, talking about sometimes you need to be sad. Sometimes you need to have negative emotions because that's what's good and healthy. And that's kind of bittersweet, especially for a song in this series.
Candles don't glow until they burn. That's something up right there.
Right.
You can't be Pinkie
for that
Pie all the
message,
time.
this episode, I mean, the song, like, really, it kind of went full tilt positive, like trying to be the antidote for getting discouraged by that. Like, no, see how much light comes from that. Yeah, they're very much trying to make it a positive message there.
Yeah, I mean,
it very much reminded me of the movie Inside Out.
Oh my gosh, yes.
When it's revealed that having joy is dependent on having sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally agree with that.
But I also just want to say I specifically liked the way Autumn Blaze in particular was shown to have gone just a little bit stir crazy from being the only solo speaker living on her own, naming her shadow and drawing a face on one of her feet to talk to. It's
Coconuts.
yeah, it's one of those things where it's weird, but of course she would do that. She'd go nuts after a while, but not.
We all would.
Yeah.
Anyone would in those circumstances.
Probably.
Like, with no entertainment, like, that's just literally, like, you're just in solitude, isolation.
That was a real nice touch. And, like, this episode, I don't know if I necessarily like it more than What Lies Beneath, but just what it has over it is just even that is just right down to the little nuances. The song flows really, really naturally.
And even the way she doesn't know how to pronounce certain words because she hasn't used them in a wheel while.
God. I can relate to that. Like you're not always 100% on those, especially if you don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, yeah, my picks for back-to-back great episodes. Yeah, back to the writers again. For this one, they hired an acclaimed international playwright who has never written for this show before, but yeah, who comes in fresh off of that.
Yeah, this is like one of the cases in which there's not only a guest star, there's a guest writer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I sort of feel like that's sort of like the stereotype for like many of these guest star role episodes in the series. It's like they bring their A game for them. Like, make sure like the scripts is on point, make sure that everything goes down smoothly, make sure the guest has a significant role, that they're able to carry the story forward, all that jazz.
Mm.
Do you guys know how another reviewer pointed this out to me, but Kieran is actually another, like in the, I believe either Japanese or Chinese. I'm trying to
Japanese. Yeah, Kieran is the
It's
Japanese variation of the Chinese Qilin, which I believe the Chinese Qilin was referenced in Mistmane's People, but these are Kieran, which is Japanese.
We are in Kieran in this case is just literally dragon unicorns. That's really what they are.
Sort of chimerical in a way.
Yeah, I can totally see that, and I love how they handled magic in this episode as well, because it shows that the Kieran do have magic to levitate, and it makes me wonder: can they cast spells the same way? Can they only levitate, or can they teleport, or do more complicated spells than that?
I doubt we saw them at their peak.
Yeah. Can you imagine them at their peak? Just literally, just.
Speaking of guest stars, the voice actress playing Autumn Blaze was having the time of her life, it seemed like.
Yeah.
That would
Definitely was a
be
controlled
Rachel
experience.
Bloom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I know her from any other projects she's done, because I did look it up way back when. But I mean, she's definitely. I'm guessing she was improvising at least some of this, and because these themes I'd also read up do pertain to her a lot. I mean, you wonder if she maybe had a hand in writing it, or in conferencing on what this was going to be. I mean, she's behind this 100%. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So shall we move on then to Father Knows Peace?
Just before we do, on a slightly meta note for this episode, Sounds of Sounds, tying it in with the Brony community, do you think LightningBliss is part Kieran? Because I saw some definite similarities between their design and hers.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Oh, that and how he flares up whenever somebody calls her cute. Gets that mad.
It makes me wonder.
Yeah, she kind of goes full on Nerik when she gets upset.
Well then. Alright. Anybody else? Going
No.
once. Going twice. Father Knows Beast. That's what we're on. On the O.
I honestly did not even finish this one. Like, that's how I felt about it.
The ending is rather important, though. Honestly, like, the ending is probably the best part.
I did eventually see the ending, but I mean, getting there wasn't worth it to me.
Ninja ACDC.
What about, I thought someone else was first.
Yeah, it was picked.
Don't strut the issue.
Alright, but going up for mine is, actually, I feel I'm one of the more positive ones in this episode, and it's less that I think it's a great episode. I just think it's, I know, again, I hate to see this okay episode, but like there's just a lot of okay episodes this season. But it's an okay episode that had an interesting idea, but it's just uncomfortable to watch most of this episode. Like, at least 50% of this episode is just uncomfortable to watch because it's like... But yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it.
Pickberry.
Personally, I'm with Omni. It was a very hard episode to finish, but once it was over, it was a decent message.
Calliope.
Well, they gave us What Lies Beneath, and then they gave us Sounds of Silence, and they were doing so well, and then it kind of crashed. I did not care for this episode at all.
Gunmetal G.
I just would like to say this. This is not the worst Spike episode. However, this episode was quite literally slog to get through once you realize what the main conflict is, and before that, it was a complete mystery to me what the episode was going for. But then as soon as everything became clear, oh, I did not have pleasure of viewing this episode at all.
Well, it's an interesting time in a man's life where he's the most positive vote in a My Little Pony chat group.
With the Spike fan outrage.
Mine is an okay opinion. Is yours above that or about the same?
I honestly thought this was another B grade. I'm just trying to call it back. Well, okay, a strike against it might be that it wasn't the most memorable thing for me, but I mean, the only thing that I thought was kind of weak was that, you know, the supposed dad just, what was he doing? He was kind of playing the same shtick after a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Alright, do this for me, and this, and Spike doesn't get it, and I mean, I felt like it was resting on its laurels and not on something all that good, but I mean, outside of that, I was alright with this as Spike's development, his character development on not having that many dragons to relate to mentor him. Felt like it was almost a bit of an apology for like
basically
that ends well. Yeah, having Spike beat down for dragon sneezing and, you know, being made to feel left out or like he wasn't living up to expectations. Now Twilight is the one who almost too harshly is not living up to expectations and has to take a hard pill to swallow. And I mean, I don't know if I like it per se, but I mean, I did really appreciate that the dynamic between them now is that, okay, that Twilight wants what's best for Spike first and foremost, and I mean, she's even willing to swallow her feelings a little bit. Like Ember, fine, and okay, I'm just going to keep saying things are fine if I keep going, but I mean, I thought it held together pretty well. I mean, I was a little surprised that it ended up being written off as that bad by a lot of people.
Oh, second?
Yep.
I'm also in the okay camp, actually. This is why I said first, this is not the worst Spike episode. Like, in fact, like I find it to be like an okay episode. Like, its build up and setup, it's serviceable. It's alright. It actually works a lot better than some of the earlier Spike episodes. It's not as bad as like those episodes' weak points are. It's just that like the main thing that grinds my gears is quite literally them waving the flag on us possibly discovering anything about Spike's heritage. That's the thing. That is the thing that I'm so peeved about.
I know. I mean, if they wanted to say, okay, we're never gonna know anything for sure about Spike's history, I could accept that. You know, say it's a mystery, we're never gonna know. I can accept that. But don't tease it like that.
With the good flashback story about the mom. Like, I was buying it up. You have no idea how much hype there was. I was hyped about this episode for the long haul when the leaks came out. And then for the episode to disappoint me like this. so much time and effort. And like what could have been like the greatest like encapsulation for like Spike character development in the season. But no, it went into the mediocre tier. It went into the triple threat layer of just okay episodes for the growth of Spike and for the growth of his relationships. Like, it feels like a bit of a de-evolution, or it feels like a season 1 or season 2 episode that should not be here at the tail end of the series.
But, I mean, I don't know. Well, actually, this is where my semi-true fan second mantra might actually play in my favor a little bit. I mean, I can understand why people would have a vested interest in seeing Spike's backstory, but I'm like, okay, well, if this is the story you're going to tell, then I'm going to grade it as the story is told, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, I totally get that. It definitely didn't detract so much for like the episode's rating because it still would have been like in the okay tier. It's just that like the episode kind of hits on like some personal spots that just it's like it feels better than what it actually is.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It does feel worse than it actually is because it kind of twists this emotional knife in because I like Spike. He doesn't do anything wrong in this episode. He's sweet and lovable and sympathetic, and we just have to endure watching him be used and manipulated by someone who doesn't care about him, and he doesn't realize it, and it just hurts that much more because of that.
We're all his parents at this point.
The one thing, sort of going back, whereas one thing I didn't mention this, but like my original thing way back when I first seen this, like what I felt what made this episode better is one, like it's unfortunate what Spike is basically taking advantage of. The biggest issue is, what was his fake father's name?
Sludge.
He gets no he gets no comeuppance. He just gets away scot-free with a pillow. Like that's like I feel like this episode would have been more satisfying if there would have been consequences of him taking advantage of Spike.
Like Reenie
don't give him that
him.
pillow. Have Twilight grab it out of his closet at the last second. Like, no.
Can I just say that I loved the ending to where not only because you learn that spoilers, which it's not really spoilers because I'm pretty sure everyone's seen it, it's not Spike's father, but because Spike and Twilight have a moment where Twilight acknowledges that even though she's not a dragon, she basically helped to raise him, and they recognize each other as family.
It was really nice. And I mean,
yeah.
I thought it. I mean, they had a moment kind of like that in Oswald and Enswald too. Once again, but I felt it a lot more here, honestly.
Yeah, it was a nice moment. And I'll also say I did like the way they developed his relationship with Smolder. I would like to see more Spike Smolder episodes where they bond over being dragons in Equestria.
Dragons in Equestria, come along with friends.
I know, like, some people ship them now, but, like, I feel like Smolder, like, I feel what she works with Spike so well. She feels like the big sister he never had.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that. I don't see them as shipping material. She seems like a big sister figure to him, and I like that.
Yeah,
that was a great way to take advantage of having a character like that on the table.
Yeah, because Twilight, she's sort of in between a mother and a sister figure to him. She's basically like, but she's more leaning on the mother side. So like, it's a weird thing where it's like, I feel he sees, like, for instance, Shining Armor as a brother more than like a uncle, but she feels, but Twilight's more of a mother than a sister, if that makes sense.
You saying the whole somewhere between a mother and a sister thing immediately made me think of Chinatown.
Well, it made me think
of Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Anakin. I don't know if anybody wanted that comparison, but it did.
Well, family members don't need to fall into traditionally easily described roles. A family member can be anyone that you have that close bond and love with, regardless of exactly how you define it.
See, the Apple family.
Yeah,
Yes.
be a part of the Apple family, even if you're so distantly related that we can't define it. Yeah.
Here.
We're apples forever, apples together. We're family, but so much more.
We're an amalgamation that you'll sooner want us to be your family in season 7.
Even if you're a winner.
Actually, it looked like what this guy was doing to Spike. I mean, I get that's making it feel worse. I've had other episodes that gave me that reaction, like Sweetie Belle's transformation in For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils. That drove me up the wall a little bit, because, I mean, like, I guess on its own terms, I would just have to say it's a flawed attempt at development, but I mean, like, personal reaction, I'm like, okay, you traded in what Sweetie Belle was for that? Yes, but I guess I had so much that reaction here just because, I mean, I guess, one, I mean, I'm not, like, I guess, personally mad at Sludge. I just kind of saw him as a schlub taking advantage of the situation. I'm like, okay, you're a jerk, but I'm satisfied to just kick you out and have you not come back. And, like, Spike, I mean, if he were, like, legitimately getting kicked and not standing up for himself there, and that not being corrected, like in what's it called, One Bad Apple or something like that, maybe I would have more. Honestly, that didn't seem like he was suffering all that much. It seemed like he was pretty enthusiastic for it, and when he realizes that he's been taken advantage of, it's like, oh well, I guess we can straighten this out in that case. I guess it felt like about what would happen in a scenario like that to me.
Yeah. One other thing that was a little bit weird in this episode was that overall, the show has been fairly consistent in its portrayal of dragon sizes, with adolescent dragons being just slightly larger than ponies, and adult dragons being much larger. And Sludge was definitely written as though he were middle-aged, and yet he was the same size as the adolescent dragons.
He's a Gary Coleman dragon.
That would fit with him being Spike's dad.
It's one of those things, like, I sort of get that, but at the same time as the comics and other continuity, it's like, it's still weird with the dragon size, because there are adult dragons besides him that are, besides Sludge, that are that size. It's just, the show itself is pretty good at not showing them. It's just, the show itself keeps it more refined. Okay, this is a baby-ish preteen dragon, Spike. This is a teenage dragon, all the jerks in Dragon's Quest. And also, I guess,
whatever
Ember.
it is.
Oh yeah, but I think it's also like the case of like the later seasons, like pulling away from the adult dragon design that might have caused this.
Well, not necessarily, because we still have like Ember's father is still a giant, full-grown dragon. So I feel it's just
giant dragon.
Yeah, it's just they don't really define how dragons. Besides, because they imply that like the giant greed thing is just sort of like an allergic reaction sort of thing, where it's like you're not supposed to sort of have your growth happen that way, but it's also implied that dragons will naturally get that big without the extra greed growth that was implied this season. But
yeah, because in the Moltdown episode, Smolder explained that greed-based growth is different than natural growth.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is that, okay, Lord Torch, it seemed like what they were implying was that he was partly in charge because he was one-of-a-kind dragon that big, like in How to Train Your Dragon. I mean, like, he's apparently ruled over this swarm for long enough so that there are going to be other adults in there, and yet he's the only one that big, which, I don't know, there's a bit of a spanner in it.
He's the alpha.
Yes, the behemoth.
So, I mean, like, how many dragons do get that big? I mean, we started out with, I think the first 2 dragons besides Spike we saw were almost torch-sized, and then we haven't had any more like that for a while.
Well, there's a whole bunch during Dragon Quest that are just in the background.
Dragon migration and such, and then...
Yeah, all the full-grown dragons we saw in Dragon Quest were similarly large.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Lord Torch doesn't even have one of those to rule over, apparently.
No, it's implied like he rules all dragons. It's just...
He just called the teens.
Yeah.
Okay, to be fair, I guess that would make a certain amount of sense. Like, okay, I want to put someone in charge who's going to rule a long time.
Oh, and also just in general, passing over the torch to the next generation sort of thing. Because it's implied all the adult dragons would be about his same generation. They would have competed for the throne back when he did. So, like, it's good to pass it on to the next generation after that. So,
just so that there won't be any usurpers to the throne, just like Game of Thrones against him.
Yeah, or to use like a medieval comparison, like you don't pass the crown onto your uncle. You don't pass the crown typically onto your brother. You pass it on to your son, sort of thing.
And I guess to be fair to dragon culture, that's still more, equal opportunity. Then I'm just going to give it to my daughter. He actually was about to forbid his daughter from even competing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's sort of weird how he was trying to forbid Ember from competing. Yet other girl dragons were okay. So I guess
she was the smallest one after Spike. I think was the reason.
Like runts of the litter stick together.
You could interpret that there was a note of fatherly protectiveness in there.
Yeah, I guess dragon fatherly protectiveness.
Yeah. It is the only case we actually have dragon parents in this case. That's sad, but also endearing to Amber's character. But yeah, I'm just now like I can't believe like we sidetracked away from like that episode because of this. Overall, just talking about dragon culture as a whole because this episode doesn't provide anything else except for like the fake father plot.
Because I don't really want to talk about this episode. It was painful to watch.
I know, Calliope. We're all there.
Yes.
I mean, just want to give one final note, sort of off topic, but on topic before we move on or finish this. This discussion made me remind me that like a great season 9 plot would be Ember loses. Like Ember has like the has the scepter taken from her, so she has to rely on her friends to get it back to be Empress again.
A challenge for the throne.
Challenge for the throne. And
Like,
okay, and here's the thing: it's not actually Garble. This turns out to be the Garble redemption episode. Come on, guys! Come on!
That would be interesting, but I don't have faith in Purple at all.
I know, because he's
Also,
the most homeless-
I feel I also subscribe to the camp that not everyone needs or should be redeemed.
I know. I'm just making that as a joke because Garble just went down the homicidal path a few too many times for him to be considered for redemption.
Well,
I'm
he
just
did say
saying.
he wanted to burn all ponies when he was in charge or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
To be fair, he's too lazy to probably even do that.
I'm just saying for sure. He's had some motivations.
Mm.
I'm almost just surprised. Usually when people have this kind of reaction to an episode, I'm, right there on board. The list of, maybe it's longer than I realized, because I guess Secrets and Ties, some people had that reaction to.
Yeah, you're not often the most positive voice in the room.
Yeah.
It's a fine day. Although, I mean, well, to be fair, I feel like it's happened. Not so much, not at all. It's just like last show has gone on. Like I'm a ne'er-do-well defender. I'm a putting your hoof down defender.
Mm,
I like putting your hoof down. I know a lot of
Me
people
too.
don't like it, but I do.
me too. We're not one of those people who decided to subscribe to a certain belief of a certain reviewer.
Yeah, I mean, I've hardcore never been on board with the the main reason to reject the episode being because it's too mean. Meanness enters into friendships, and maybe more than it should, but it does.
Yeah. There's moments in which friends can be catty to each other to the point of like them not wanting to be friends anymore.
I mean, especially when, someone like Fluttershy, for example, who plays with a girl a lot and ends up suddenly finding herself being told that it's her turn to do some of the whipping. I mean, it's like, honestly, what do you think is going to happen?
Full on renegade revenge.
Like, doing the same thing that, like, tons of other stories have done, and making, instead of using that to explore your own point, using it to explore the same point and act like it's brand new. That, on the other hand, is something I got limited patience for. So maybe, or at least that's my interpretation of me playing the role and keep playing more and more, is because that's been more the approach lately. But hey, I don't know, it is what it is. And
Finale?
the finale.
Finale.
We've reached the end.
And now we've reached the grand finale.
And
Animale
now
Carnivale.
the end is near. And now I'm going to go back to the McLaughlin group approach. What did you think of this episode? Omnio opinion.
Definitely a very different ending. Definite peaks and valleys.
Billy Pickberry.
It's a finale we weren't expecting, but at the same time, we always knew that Cozy Glow was evil.
Ninja DCEFG.
I just want to play off with that. Even without the spoilers, we sort of hinted weren't surprised he was evil. But yeah, going off my summary of this episode, it's great. Honestly, it's one of my favorite finales since the original. I guess season 1 or 2 might be my right up there.
Dude.
I want to keep it short because
range.
What?
Your turn.
Oh, sorry. No, I really liked this finale. I think they took some gambles. They tried some new things. They tried some different angles they haven't done before, and it generally paid off pretty well.
Get up.
I will have to say that this finale reaches some interesting points about like the apocalypse of Equestria, via lost magic, but also Cozy Glow's true machinations revealing is kind of like, okay. Oh wait. This was what I was gonna say. Equestria nearly gets taken over by Darla Dimple. Everyone will panic.
Yes.
Darla Dimple, and Little Gideon, and Princess Morbucks, and Original Tweety Bird, and
Shirley Temple. Let's not forget that.
what, she was evil?
She was prototypes for all those characters.
And Baby Doll.
Yeah.
And Baby Doll.
Oh yeah, well. Actually,
You know
that's probably the closest comparison, which would almost fit if Cozy was just actually an adult who looks like a kid.
Oh my god.
This is how you write a manipulative, trickster, deceiver antagonist.
Who is
Because so often when they try to write this kind of character, they overplay the hand and they make it too obvious from the get-go. But with this character, like when she was introduced, everyone kind of got this vibe like something was off about her, but we didn't know for sure. And then when we saw her in What Lies Beneath, it was like, okay, there's definitely something off here, but we're still not sure what's going on. And here we just saw her playing everyone exactly how she wanted them and planning things out and all these subtle little machinations. And then it's like, yes, we know what's going on, and they kept us guessing. We didn't know. I don't think anybody predicted exactly what was going to happen or where it was going to go, and that's how you play this kind of character.
Can I also say that this is quite was expecting from Starlight Glimmer, but when the payoff happened and people were left disappointed, we had to wait quite literally 3 more seasons for such a character to be attempted again, but this time to be pulled off more successfully.
Actually, I'd say she has a lot in common with Discord.
Oh, no,
Because
yeah, Discord.
Because they're both manipulators who kept us guessing about where their
Calliope, did you cut off?
Hi. Someone get that clip from Spaceballs about how even in the future nothing works.
Even in the future, nothing works.
Unfortunately, yeah, she probably won't even know. Like, she dropped for a while. That awkward part where you realize you've been
Like all
talking
the
for a
other
while.
times, she can probably hear us, but not make her voice heard.
Yeah, I was just gonna like as soon as she was finished, like I was just gonna say like yeah, like Discord is very much of the more jovial side of like the trickster manipulator, and Double Calliope has been.
Now I've seen double.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hooray! I'm not sure what happened. But okay, I'm back.
All right, so you were in the middle of your thing, I think.
And I was just saying that she has a lot in common with Discord because they're both manipulators who kept us guessing.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
I guess the Twilight comparison or the Starlight rather comparison is it not necessarily being powerful enough to do it on her own, so having to rely on the manipulation. Character-wise, they're well, okay, I guess you could argue they're both on that. Starlight's a philosophical extremist. Cozy is doing this more because she wants to than because she thinks she could justify it.
I can definitely see that. Like, I just simply say that because of like what eventually happens as an end result of Cozy Glow versus the end result of Starlight Glimmer. Feels like a chippy switch.
Yeah, it does. That last very little end bit of the episode put me off.
Like, hey guys, Hey guys, you know this philosophical extremist that nearly destroyed the entirety of reality, but no one actually remembers because it was just time travel bullshit? Well, guess what? She gets to become an apprentice of Princess Twilight. Meanwhile, this little kid who has delusions of grandeur about ruling Equestria with the power of friendship and manipulating the masses over to her side. You want to know what she gets for collaborating with T-Rex and such, despite being a 12-year-old? She gets to be prison mates with him.
In hell.
Yeah.
So, on one side, it's like, wow, we finally get imprisonment of a villain that doesn't get redeemed. Huzzah!
Yeah.
Second half.
I
It's
almost
a
wonder if
child.
the writers were saying, like, here, is this what you want? After all the reformations that started to pick up criticism.
Yeah. And on that note, I know a lot of other people have talked about this, but wasn't Tartarus built up as this place where all the most dangerous and evil villains that have threatened the country over the centuries were locked away? And when we get there, it's basically just T-Rex and a zoo of wild animals.
Yeah, that's not hardcore. Let me down, I'll admit.
Well, they are animals. They're individual animals, and we don't know why they're there.
There is, to be fair,
The bugbear was identified as going there. Yeah.
The Chimera.
to be fair, Equestria does have a high reformation rate with villains.
Imagine
Yeah,
it's
now they've basically killed the possibility that any other villains could come out of there unless there's a room we didn't see.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that they were going to Tartarus, I was hoping that we'd get a glimpse of some other, really cool and evil and threatening supervillains. And
Maybe
no.
a particular ram.
So much.
Yeah, Grogar, yes, if they could have had Grogar in there, that would have been perfect, especially since in the original generation he had been sealed away a long time ago.
Yeah. Actually, they did have him, in a storybook Twilight was reading back in, whatchamacallit,
Flurry of Promotion.
Yeah, they name dropped him. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you almost wonder if that's the idea that he's supposed to have been just like a legend in this. Or, legends can turn out to be real, but yeah.
Daring do.
It's Equestria. All the legends are real.
You got me there.
It's so real.
The fiction books are real.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, that's an Indiana Jones reference.
Yeah, in
Indiana Jones
Equestria,
writes books about all of his adventures after he has them.
everything is fake.
And how, all of the old pulp heroes were written like they were real events. Which is where Indiana Jones has his roots, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, this I think is honestly the first, or at least more than any other, the two-parter where I feel like my opinion from episode to episode really changed. Because I mean, the pilot, Friendship is Magic. I mean, okay, I do think that the first episode is the stronger of the two, but I still think they're both great. The Princess Twilight, I felt like it might have dropped some contrived twists in the second half, but I almost really can't even see it as two separate parts. This, I thought it had some great build-up with showing how good at this Cozy has gotten, and her plan unfolding, the mystery of what's happening, all the pieces in play. I was getting into it, and heck, not only is Tartarus as the petting zoo, but I mean, that whole thing really ends up being pretty darn pointless. And not only that, I mean, heck, if the main six hadn't gotten out of there at all, if the student six had saved the day, and they were like, okay, now it's time to go unlock Tartarus and let them out, that would have been all the same. And the string of letdowns there doesn't even stop for me with the reveal of Tartarus, because I mean, then they say that the fantastical animals, it turns out that they're actually just regular animals plus magic. That's how
Yeah.
a little sonic screwdriver solution, which I don't know.
It is too bad that It is too bad they didn't drain magic to a point where all the ponies just turned into plastic toys.
Oh my god. Or in Rarity's case, a marshmallow.
Okay, one thing I was confused about, though, is the episode where T-Rex was introduced established that Pegasi are dependent on their magic to fly. When he absorbs their magic, they can't fly anymore. And yet in this episode, when the magic was drained away, the Pegasi could still fly.
Well, to be fair, I guess, did they say draining? Because there's still some magic left because the creatures are still creatures.
Yeah,
the thing
I don't
is
know.
also, like, the Pegasi, I don't think they're shown flying as well, and also the main thing with the Pegasi is their magic with, like, in terms of their weather manipulation sort of thing.
Although, I mean, but yeah, they did. I mean, they did still say the magic is what lets them fly. To be fair,
Yeah.
I mean, like
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it seemed to disproportionately affect the unicorns in this episode, even though the other T-Rex episode, Twilight's Kingdom, all three races were affected equally.
Not really.
Like, he did have to get all the unicorn magic before he could take away flight.
Well, the thing is, the unicorns are by far, like, they're most reliant on magic by far of the other three races. So it's like
control their magic to do a lot of different things.
So it's like, I'm trying to find a comparison. It's like, if you take away a computer from, like, a PC gamer versus a regular person, the PC game, even though they both lose the same thing, the one is a lot more reliant on it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although, on that note, one thing I will say that I loved that I didn't catch the first time I saw the episode. I didn't catch it until a later viewing. You know the scene at the end when the Young Six save the day and it shows all the magic going back to the ponies and all the unicorn horns start lighting up again? When it shows the magic going back to the main six, there's three little glowy blobs of magic that go back. Two go into Rarity and Twilight's horns, and the third one goes straight into Pinkie Pie's face.
Yeah. Time to fill up
Makes
that
you wonder about
fanfiction.
that one.
Pinkie's magic of breaking the fourth wall. She is secretly a unicorn.
Alright, guys, I'm sorry, but I can't get out.
Yeah, it's almost 2.
That's okay.
Yeah. You did your best. You did your best.
This is actually not the first time someone has fallen asleep during one of these.
Look
That's
straight
true.
at seconds.
Yeah, we gave Alice a pretty hard time for that, I remember.
Oh, it was not Sarah.
Well, we gave him a hard time because we could hear him snoring.
It was a snoring dragon. The jokes were endless.
Alright. Which I was going to give her final thoughts before she left, but... Alright. I lost my train of thought there, but... Okay, thanks for coming, Pick. And... otherwise, this episode... what else I was thinking... Oh yeah, I don't know, Cozy's plot, like, the way things kind of went round and round in the school, I felt like the actual arc here, the thing running from start to finish in the episode, is Cozy versus the school, and then by what ends up becoming versus the Student 6. But that, I mean, instead of building that, I felt like it more took detours from that, and like we take a time out for Chancellor Naysay to do his thing, and then leave, and then to check in on Tartarus every so often, and I don't know, like, it feel kind of disjointed to anybody?
I can see that with like a lot of the Chancellor Naysay segments in which it's like it's like the same issue you can complain about for like the Tartarus scenes. It's like Naysay doesn't really provide much of anything. He's just supposed to be like an antagonist that gets reformed in the end, even though he's kind of like
He's the red herring.
Yeah.
He is the red herring, but yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I can see what you mean about it being a little disjointed.
Mhm.
right, but yeah, I mean, the episode doesn't really act like that he's gonna. This episode, that is, doesn't really act like he's gonna end up being the villain. And, it establishes that him showing up, if anything, is semi-helpful because it holds Cozy at bay.
Mhm.
For this episode, like what I really liked about it is it felt balanced. All the student six got like their role. All the main six, was like the B plot, like got their moment to shine, and like even like the transition from like to Cozy being a villain I felt good. The only like issue I sort of has is I wish beforehand they would have better established the magical artifacts. They mention them in like 2 or 3 episodes, but they don't really sort of go over their power. They're sort of shown as more of like historical items instead of this thing is stupidly powerful, so we need to keep it locked properly or stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Still, though,
Although I do like the little throwaway line that Cozy had at the very beginning of the episode when she was talking about all these chores she had done for Twilight, and one of them is, and I cataloged all the magical artifacts in the school.
So, by implication that, there's a lot of magic there.
Which, again, like, there's... You go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and that she had all the information on the artifacts, and she had it at her disposal.
It's... which I did get that part. Also, like, there's a few other times they're shown like her like sort of like involved with the artifacts. That's my issue. Main issue is like they didn't really proportionally show how powerful or dangerous these artifacts potentially could be until like this episode, where like a lot like having like what was it like 6 of them like lined up in a certain like way was able to drain all magic in Equestria. Like. Yeah, that's quite a little power they have. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. We've had these artifacts mentioned, and I think they did try to build it up because they mentioned it in a couple episodes previous to this one. But even after seeing the finale, I don't know what those 6 artifacts all were or what exactly they all did.
Like you could have had some build up on that. I mean, I think everybody's been debating season arcs, and 4 and 7 are, well, they're not the only ones to go for them, but they're the ones that went for at least some progression there, I guess. That season 1 had the Grand Galloping Gala, and season 3 had, it at least introduced the journal before the Star Scroll, the bearded spell before Twilight pulled it off at the end, but this one, I think, could have it tightened up its focus a little more, had that, running throughout the season, that, like, escalating tension and mystery, and, what's it going to be like when the other shoe drops?
Yeah, I like that they did not introduce Cozy Glow at the beginning of the season. They introduced her partway through, which made her look more like an incidental character, which, again, made it harder to guess what was going to go on with her.
It's clever, although in their first episode, I think I don't remember it firsthand, but I mean, only vaguely, but I think somebody else said in the earlier podcast that there's a moment where they try to drop a hint that she's evil, and I mean, in hindsight, you know what they were trying to do, but in the context of the episode, it almost came off as just a little bit awkward, like just kind of poor fitting. Because I mean, the possibility that she was doing what she was doing on purpose was never off the table, but the episode plays it like, well, no. As it turns out, in the end, she meant well and had a pure maniacal devil grin in there, but she meant well.
Yeah, there's a little bit that I didn't find out about until someone pointed it out to me. But in Cozy Glow's first episode, you know the scene when the Crusaders come to ask her how she did on her test and she bursts out crying and says, "I failed"? If you slow that scene down and play it frame by frame, there's like just a couple frames where just before she bursts into tears, she gets this evil-looking smile on her face.
I don't know, like, actually, how did everyone think Cozy played out across this season?
I thought he played out well.
I would say 3 or 4 stars, where...
Out of 5?
Yeah. Like, not bad, but not, I would say, great. I feel they could have better foreshadowed her, but they didn't sort of poorly foreshadow her, if that makes sense. Like, I wish they would have had more episodes where she's treated like she was in, what was it? What Lies Beneath, I felt was like the perfect example of like an episode, like how they should have used her more. Where she's, and it's sort of not really a bad, evil villainish force, but she's sort of antagonizing the main 6 in a sort of roundabout way, where it's like, oh, did I do that? I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Where it just feels natural that she's doing that, and then at the end it's realized, like, oh no, that was intentional the whole time, sort of thing.
I mean, once I got the point that, yeah, she was secretly malicious, that there was going to turn out to be something wrong with her, I was like, okay, I can take that for what it is. That looks okay. But I mean, yeah, this episode, I really like how you see how clever she is and just how carefully she's laid this plan, how well she's taken the time to make sure she knows what she's doing. But on the other hand, her being this cute little kid, like, I mean, the episode, I mean, it seems to be under the impression that that's a twist, but I mean, that, her being a kid doesn't factor in at all. Like, if she was Baby Doll, but what she does and her fate, it would be no different. And in fact, like, even the I mean, it seemed, well, they try to play up a couple of times that, yeah, she uses the Shirley Temple voice, the little Moppet cutesy voice, and yeah, acts all innocent, and they seem to want that to be fun, that this incredibly cute character is actually that evil. And I don't know, I was kind of sitting there thinking, like I said before, oh, you mean like Princess Morbucks and Darla Dimple and Little Gideon and Original Tweety? And
yeah, I mean, we have seen this kind of character done before, but, you know, we've seen all the character archetypes done before. It's not a question of if you've seen it done before, it's a question of if it's done well here, and I think it is.
Well, not just though, well, I would even take it a little step further if the point is not that, hey, we're doing this arc, isn't that such a clever idea, but rather, okay, what can we do with a character who fits that arc? And, I mean, it's almost ironic, because it seems like they want Cozy's gimmick to be that she's deceptively cute, and when she's really that evil, but that, I mean, it just feels like they're riding on the coattails of a cliche, and instead the evil mastermind stuff is what works best about her, which is the best part of this episode. It's where I almost have 2 reactions at once to this thing.
I don't think this episode was perfect. I think there are areas where it could stand some improvement, but overall I was pleased with it.
Yeah. Overall, like, as taken as one, this would have to be in my top 3 of the season. I think this In the first episode, the first half I thought was great, and even the second half, it's not terrible. It's like B-grade stuff. I did like it better than the two-part premiere, though. I'll give it that. I thought, the premiere was, it was a little more laid back, I guess, and it made sense for it to be, because it was about just kind of trying to get this school off the ground. It was Twilight doing some self-reflection, and this had some more active cards on the table that, Cozy putting her plan into motion, and the Student 6 all being different creatures, and how that's, played out across the season, and how they step it up at the end, and, stand together and win out, and all of that stuff works pretty great. But, like I said, the disjointed stuff is where I feel like we get off that note a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think it would have worked to include this scene because it would have thrown off the pacing and the flow too much, but I would have been very curious to see how Cozy managed to trap Starlight.
Like as a flashback sort of thing?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think it would have worked really well to show it, because at the point when Starlight was captured, we were still not supposed to know that it was Cozy. So, showing that would have given the game away. But I'm curious to know how it went down.
Actually,
the way,
anybody think that could have worked, maybe even better than just Tyrik's speech as the reveal that Cozy is behind all this?
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
The way I took it is that the way I took it is how she took it, she was captured, is the same way how she almost captured the Student 6, where the spell itself almost yoink them in. I took it that's how she got Starlight. She's like, sorry, there's a disturbance in the basement. It's like, what is this? Yoink. Where the spell just absorbed her into it is how I took it.
Yeah, it was probably something like that.
Because the only way the Student 6 got away from it is because there was, 6 of them working together sort of thing. And there's also Starlight being go away, memeing to go away sort of thing.
Yeah.
Having to invent the reason that, is technically not there, though, is never as fun.
Yeah.
I do agree. It would have been interesting to see, a flashback of, in some way to incorporate a flashback to show, how she was captured, sort of thing.
To have the artifact set up and have just a random kite in the middle of it that she doesn't have in her collection.
Well,
ooh, a kite.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going for.
No, that would work with Pinkie Pie.
True. But yeah, Cozy versus Starlight with Cozy winning out. I probably would have had more fun with that than the main 6 versus Tyrik and Tartarus. Anybody else feel honestly, that felt like the excuse just to keep them in the episode, to say that they were still a part of it on some level?
Maybe a little, though we did get that reversal of the I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me bit.
Granted, I would this episode might go up a notch if it had Rorschach in it, but even that though felt like the most played out thing. Gives in the second they say that, it's oh my gosh, I did not think about that at all, and even the gag that Pinkie was born to play, annoying him into submission, even that, she does it for 10 seconds, and alright, I give in, speech you've heard 100 times about how you're just too annoying for me to take, and that is literally it. Even that, they managed to make feel through the motions. I'm
I don't know. I love to see when they weaponize Pinkie's hyperactivity.
I remember thinking, after I saw this episode of similar stuff that's made me laugh, and
Last roundup, the one where they got her to talk AJ into submission.
Oh yeah, no, that was pretty good.
And let's be clear.
Chimichurri Chonga.
And let's be clear, in this episode, it wasn't necessarily just that he annoyed her after a few minutes. It's that she was going to keep doing it until the end of time. So
And if we explored the comedic possibilities of how that would finally get Lord Tyrek himself to crack, well, then we'd have to spend more runtime, so no. I mean, I'd have to write like another paragraph in the script, man.
No, it would have been funny if they would have had like a clock gag where like it shows time gone by, then it's like he's like, oh yeah, it's only been 5 minutes. So
I felt like
clock's broken.
Yeah, or like
it would have had like a clock being like the typical click 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 of a talk going, and it's like broken. And it's like, oh, it's only been 5 minutes. It's like,
like in the Rainbow Dash episode, Read It and Weep, when she was bored in the hospital.
Oh yeah, I like that sequence actually. That too. Or like they could have made it their own version of the SpongeBob and the Tattletale Strangler, like where he goes from trying to get SpongeBob to stop faking him out with stuff so he can get to the strangling, to being so annoyed that he's just trying to run away far and fast, to finally throwing himself in jail because he can't get away and he can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you mean, that it didn't play out as well as that same idea has in other episodes, but I don't think it played out badly.
Yeah,
I think maybe, okay, let me say, it fell a little bit short of the mark without missing the mark entirely for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd like that together with the how they get out, like they I mean, it really felt like they invented a solution from scratch there. Like, okay, we're going to have to work with other monster animals and T-Rex, so, okay, how about we say that they take the magic out of the animals? Okay, they can do that now. And how they strong-arm T-Rex into helping them. I mean, it felt like it was more focused on just how to connect the dots from A to B, connect all the dots across A to B to get to the end point it wanted to get to, more so than like, okay, how can we make a compelling story out of this?
The thing is, like, even with that said, I felt this was a less of an ass pull than it normally was, because like the finale before this, where the Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad, like that sudden like everyone like changing, turning good. That felt really. Besides, what's his name? Thorax. Besides Thorax, it felt decently built up. But like all the other ones, just like magically turning. That felt really sudden and out of nowhere. This.
That was my least favorite part of that episode. I'm pretty sure, but even that, like you said, felt kind of built up with Thorax. I mean, it felt like there was kind of a,
if it was just
something
Thorax,
compelling there, like a drive to, okay, get us to some kind of a passionate endpoint there. I mean, like this, well, heck, it's trying to connect the dots to something that ends up being pointless anyway. I mean, a lot of it just feels really rote.
If it was just Thorax,
Okay,
if it was just Thorax, I would have felt that would have been better built up. But the way it was, everything is like, I didn't like it. And that's a lot of the endings where it just feels like out of nowhere. What I liked about this one is, yeah, you seem like how it seems a little ham-fisted how they get the magic from the animals, but at the same time, it felt decently built up how they're establishing like natural magic, like the kinds of magical creatures that was like one of the last to be drained. So I felt overall like it felt like more built up. Like everything felt built up. Maybe not the best built up it could have been, but it felt overall logical. At least equestrian logical.
Okay, you know what?
No, I'm more or less done.
Well, I was gonna say, I had an idea just now as we were talking. You know, when they went to Tartarus, they had that key that Cozy Glow gave them, which was one-time use only, which was obviously intentional on Cozy's part to get them in and then get them trapped. But we were also saying how disappointing it was that there weren't more actual villains in Tartarus. It was mostly just the animals. What if there had been more actual villains, like who had weird, mysterious, dark powers or hidden knowledge or whatever? And what if one of them knew how to fix the key so it would work a second time, and they had to cut a deal with the villain in order to get out?
That could have been pretty intriguing.
I mean, I felt that could have been good, but the reason I felt they didn't want to do that is they didn't want to, there's no villains in a show that they wrote that's established that they could have else had in there because they've basically all been reformed or are basically just antagonists. Like throwing, I know we hate the Flim Flam Brothers. They've done a lot of nasty shit, but they don't deserve to be in Tartarus, sort of thing. There's not really any other established villains that have not been reformed that deserve to be in Tartarus. So they would have to create a whole bunch of. Yeah, I know, but they would have to create a whole bunch of new ones.
But what if they did create? But what if they did create a new one, and they introduced this new villain who could fix the key, and the main six had to cut a deal, which led to him getting out and then becoming a threat in the next season?
But actually, I was trying to work my way towards is they would have to create new villains, and the way the show currently works, all the seasons are basically very independent. They would have to change their structure where I do get what you're saying because that's exactly how it could have worked if they were establishing new villains was have one of them they strike a deal with and that villain they release because they hate to do it but they struck a deal. That one becomes like the leading antagonist of the next season. That's how if they were going to do that, that's how they should have done that. But I just felt
thinking in that direction. I mean, I might that it would be more compelling though.
I mean, that's what I was saying with you is that's just sort of so out of this standard style of the show. I just feel they couldn't have done that with how the show works. It's sort of like how we would like the show to be more dark than what it is and mature, in terms of story elements, but that's not how the show is, sort of thing. It's that's how I feel with this villain thing. Is they had to establish a whole bunch of brand new, strong, and compelling villains for that to sort of work, and have one of them be coming back next season. That would have been awesome, but sort of not how the show works with its season so far. They'll agree it would have been a cool way to establish a villain for next season.
Or another way it might have worked, what if we didn't even see what happened in Tartarus? What if the second that Tyrek reveals it's all a trap and the doors close, now suddenly back at the school, everybody's wondering what happened to the main six, oh, do we have to save them from who even knows what? And then Cozy's taking over and picking off allies one by one until it's nothing but the student six left. And then, the main six, other than maybe just right at the end to check in with them, or towards the end to check in with them, we just have them firmly out of the action instead of tinkering as though they're going to possibly get back in on it.
Well, that's the issue. Goes back to one thing I like about this is all the main six actually had, and all of them were involved within the finale. They actually had worked as a team. Where for a lot of previous seasons they were sidelined completely, and it was Twilight the Savior or last season Starlight. So it felt good for all the main six to actually be involved in the resolution. It's just a B plot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you either go for it or you don't, just with the different ways this episode goes. So, me, I guess I sort of went for it. Alright. I guess we're finally signing out after this, the long-awaited conclusion. So, this is your second opinion.
This is
Calliope. This is Calliope.
And this is the Omni Viewer.
There we go.
And this is Gunmetal Gator asleep on the call, I think.
Speak, Count, is your cue.
Alrighty then. Well, I guess we'll be sure to tell Pickberry about that one. But have a sign out you care to give DC, or
what? I already said Ninja DC with everyone else.
might have gotten drowned out there.
Technically, my fan interaction. Everyone knows me at Ninja DC because that's my channel thing. But incidentally, my OC's name is like Moondrip. It's like, it's a joke. It's like, no one knows.
I was going to ask you if that's what you wanted me to call you, but...
Oh, yeah, like Ninja DC is... Yeah, the Ninja DC is what everyone just calls me. It's just, it's one of those funny little irony things.
All right. So we're going to cut this off to continue recording all about our personal backstories, so stay tuned for that one. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.